Amazon's billion-dollar gamble on Rings of Power is unraveling, with whispers that the show might not even make it to a third season. But what if this disaster could have been avoided entirely? A trusted voice with millions of fans warned them time and again. Instead of listening, Amazon dismissed him and every fan who cared about Tolkien as toxic. Before we dive deeper, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for more latest updates. In this video, we'll break down how he completely dismantled Rings of Power in his latest review. We'll explore why Amazon's response to Valid Points has only made things worse, and what it means for the franchise's future. Stay with us as we expose how ignoring fans, disrespecting Tolkien's legacy, and poor writing have led to this epic downfall. Season 2 of the Rings of Power has officially wrapped, yet the future of the series hangs in the balance. With no word on a third season, Amazon might be reconsidering their initial plan for a 5-season epic. If they pull the plug now, it would mean wasting a staggering $1 billion on a series that has been nothing short of a disaster. The first 2 seasons performed horribly, with viewership dropping far beyond expectations. This downfall could have been avoided if Amazon had listened to fans, especially those vocal about the show's flaws from the start. One of the loudest critics has been a YouTuber whose over 2 million subscribers give him undeniable reach. He regularly draws in tens of millions with his viral content, breaking down the issues with The Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power for years, offering Amazon a clear perspective on what fans really want. For the first time, though, he released a direct, no-holds-barred takedown of Rings of Power. In his latest critique, he not only targets the show, but also the showrunners, addressing failures from both a fan's perspective and as a seasoned film critic.
And so, another shambolic, bloated, incoherent mess of a Rings of Power season finally staggers over the finish line like a 300-pound marathon runner in a novelty diver's outfit. And all that's left now is to grab a stick and poke its twitching, oversized carcass out of sheer morbid curiosity for whatever flatulent excretions we can provoke. This show is a failure in ways that I didn't even think were possible. All of the problems and annoyances of Season 1 haven't just continued, they've grown exponentially like a cancer allowed to spread unchecked. The massive and mostly unnecessary cast of characters, the hammy acting, the complete lack of world building, the tonal whiplash, the nonsensical and conflicting character motivations, the jokes that aren't funny, and the supposedly serious moments that are unintentionally hilarious. It's all here, and it's all worse than ever. It's a show that somehow manages to be rushed and superficial, boiling complex events spanning hundreds of years down into a handful of greasy, congealed scenes, but also bone-achingly slow and ponderous, taking forever to get most of its plot lines moving, keeping characters stuck in frustrating holding patterns, and repeating the same ideas over and over again. And since this feels more like an autopsy video than a review, I figured it's as good a time as any for me to go over some of the biggest problems plaguing this show, because who knows, maybe, just maybe, someone from Amazon might see it one day and promptly ignore it. Problem the first. Too many characters. This, by far, is the show's biggest fundamental problem because it spawns so many other problems that ripple through the rest of the narrative. See, not only is balancing a large cast of characters spread over multiple locations in such a way that the audience never loses sight of where everyone is and what they're doing difficult enough even for skilled writers with strong source material to draw from, of which Rings of Power has neither, but the problem's compounded in this case because the writers have brought in a whole bunch of extra characters that either didn't exist in Tolkien's story, or are doing things and going to places where they were never supposed to be. Like Dangalf and those stupid fucking hobbits who spend literally the entire season walking around and doing absolutely nothing of substance. The actual character of Gandalf shouldn't even be in Middle-earth for like 1,000 years yet, and the writers know this, so they know they can't have him interact directly with the main storyline, which leaves him stuck in a random corner of the world map, spending an entire season looking for his staff and trying to decide on a name for himself.
Gandalf!
It's pointless, boring, time-wasting stuff that absolutely kills the already terrible pacing, and it's done purely because the writers wanted another iconic character that people would recognize.
He hit the nail on the head. Amazon saw his reviews but chose to dismiss them. Instead of addressing his points, they acted as if they knew better than the devoted Tolkien fanbase. How did they handle his critique? By labeling him as one of those so-called toxic fans like many in Hollywood, Amazon seems to believe that any fan with criticism must be dismissed as part of a negative crowd. They're quick to throw around labels discrediting anyone who cares enough to voice their concerns. Right after his review, which quickly gained traction, the showrunners responded not with an apology or a plan to improve, but with a defensive lashing out, labeling him and fans as racist and sexist instead of addressing valid criticisms. This tactic is unfortunately common in today's entertainment industry. Instead of listening to fans, companies attack them and are then surprised when their audience turns on them, viewership tanks, and projects fail. He, a genuine fan of Tolkien's work, has provided in-depth analyses of the show's failures, but Amazon chalks it all up to toxicity. Their response to his critique was knee-jerk, opting for insults over constructive feedback. Let's delve into why his critique is spot on and how it exposes fundamental flaws that Amazon refuses to acknowledge. Amazon seems genuinely shocked when fans reject the show and viewership plummets. It's almost as if they can't connect the dots between their blatant disregard for feedback and fans' frustration. They ignore genuine criticism while simultaneously slandering their audience. It's no wonder people are tuning out. He has made it clear he's a true fan of Tolkien's work. His deep dives into the Rings of Power offer valuable critiques on the show's missteps. Given the popularity of his videos, it's evident many agree with his points. In his latest video, he addressed Amazon directly, likely triggering a defensive response from the company. Instead of appreciating his thoughtful analysis, they dismissed him as just another toxic fan. The irony is striking. His video was precisely what they claimed fans weren't offering genuine criticism. At no point did he invoke race or gender in his critique, contrary to Amazon's accusations. Instead, he provided a thorough breakdown of where the show went wrong, practically handing Amazon a roadmap on how to fix things, but predictably they're unlikely to follow his advice. Let's dive into his analysis, starting with one major problem: the characters. One glaring issue is the overcrowded cast. Many characters feel completely unnecessary. As he pointed out, it's not just that there are too many, the bigger problem is that none are interesting or compelling. They simply wander aimlessly throughout the series, contributing little to the story. Take Gandalf, for example. He rightly noted that his inclusion felt forced, as if shoehorned in to boost viewership by featuring a recognizable character. His presence makes no sense within the story's context. Amazon seemingly threw him into the mix in a desperate attempt to appeal to fans, but Gandalf isn't the only poorly written character. The show is filled with forgettable, uninspired figures who add nothing to the plot. This happens when you take the works of a literary genius like Tolkien and hand them over to showrunners lacking the talent and vision to bring those stories to life. The characters are flat, the writing is weak, and the storylines feel cobbled together just to fill episode runtimes. Moreover, many plotlines seem like filler, with characters serving no real purpose other than to occupy screen time. However, the issue with the characters is just the tip of the iceberg. The writers didn't just fail to create compelling characters, they also stumbled in many other areas. The Rings of Power takes place in a fantasy world, but that doesn't grant the writers a free pass to abandon logic and consistency. Just because a story is set in a fictional universe doesn't mean anything goes. Characters must exist within a carefully constructed world with its own set of rules. For instance, you can't have two medieval armies locked in combat and suddenly introduce fighter jets raining down machine gun fire. It would completely break immersion. Similarly, having characters mysteriously teleport from one end of the continent to the other within a single episode defies logic. Fantasy doesn't excuse lazy or sloppy storytelling. If the writers lack talent or understanding, it's no surprise the story suffers. Characters are only as intelligent or well-crafted as the writers behind them. When every character in the Rings of Power behaves foolishly, it reflects poorly on those writing them. Critical Drinker rightly pointed out that the show's characters make baffling decisions and lack depth, showcasing the subpar writing quality. Amazon's response to this criticism? Instead of hiring experienced or talented writers and directors, they announced they were hiring only female directors for Season 2. While representation is important, this decision highlights a glaring issue. Amazon seems more concerned with making a statement than ensuring the show's quality. What's more problematic is that this hiring practice contradicts the very idea of diversity Amazon claims to champion. By hiring only female directors, they engage in blatant discrimination against male directors based solely on gender. This double standard passes in today's industry, but it remains a form of sexism. Instead of prioritizing talent, Amazon chose to emphasize gender as the primary qualifier for their directors. This decision shines a light on Amazon's priorities. Rather than striving to improve the Rings of Power, they appear more interested in scoring points for social representation. This leads us to the next major issue the series faces. What the writers did to Sauron can only be described as character assassination. Out of all possible directions, they gave one of literature's most iconic villains a romance arc. Sauron, who embodies evil and manipulation, was reduced to a lovesick teenager desperately trying to impress a girl. It's a disgrace to the character and shows the showrunners either don't understand or respect the source material. But this isn't just about Sauron, it's part of a broader trend in the Rings of Power. The writers seem obsessed with turning villains into misunderstood victims, stripping away the black and white dynamic that made Tolkien's world compelling. As he aptly stated, these people can't write good versus evil because they don't know the difference in their minds. They're doing something profound by giving villains tragic backstories, but they're actually dismantling the core of what resonates with audiences. They're twisting a beloved franchise into something unrecognizable, leaving longtime fans feeling betrayed. He, a true Tolkien fan, endured all 16 episodes of this train wreck, hoping his analyses would reach Amazon and spark change. He produced videos breaking down the show's failures in detail, offering constructive criticism that any rational production team should appreciate. Yet Amazon never listened, dismissing his feedback just like they did with millions of discontented fans. With the show's ratings in free fall and the fanbase disillusioned, it's hard to imagine anyone sticking around for a potential third season, let alone a fifth. Amazon had initially planned for the Rings of Power to span 5 seasons, but whether they'll follow through remains to be seen. If there's one thing we've learned, it's that corporations often make baffling decisions. Who knows, maybe they'll double down on the same mistakes, thinking they know better than the very fans they've alienated. Had they listened to his genuine critiques, they could have salvaged the show. They could have created a series that honored Tolkien's legacy and captivated audiences for years to come. Instead, they rejected his input, believing they knew better than the fans, and now they face the consequences. In the end, it seems the only true downfall of the Rings of Power is the result of ignoring a dedicated fanbase and the critique of those who genuinely love the original material. Amazon's billion-dollar blunder serves as a cautionary tale of what happens when you dismiss the very audience that could save your show. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to Movie Saga for more insights and updates on the latest in entertainment. Hit that bell icon to stay notified on our upcoming content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.